A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. When Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came to the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion, with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." And they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him, and went in there where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this, and told them to give her something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord. So quite obviously this passage is about faith, and whenever we think of faith in the spiritual life, we always ask ourselves, do I have enough faith? Where can I get more faith? Do I need more faith? I have faith. Why aren't my prayers getting answered? And to get an understanding of faith, we can look to the gospel passage, especially this entire chapter of Mark, chapter 5, and see if there's a pattern to kind of recognize that might help us answer that question. And the first thing we know is that the man who is in the tombs, we see this man, he's possessed with an evil spirit. He comes out of the tombs and something strange happens. He looks for Jesus. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid and I had my hand in the cookie jar, the last person I wanted to see was my parents. Yet this man possessed by the Spirit goes to look for Jesus. This man with the Spirit looks for Jesus. The person who can really just get rid of him and stop this evil from happening. And then we see Jairus. Jairus finds Jesus in the midst of a crowd, this synagogue official. And again, we see it also with the woman suffering from hemorrhages. And we can even go into even more detail with this woman suffering from hemorrhages. We're told she was suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had tried everything. She had spent all her money. And we know she was not only suffering from these hemorrhages, but she was also suffering spiritually. Because of her illness, she would not have been able to participate in the daily social life. She would have been considered ritually unclean. And Jesus tells them, "Don't be afraid, just believe." My friends, the message for us today is this: faith comes when we look for Jesus, and we're not afraid to look for him. We can think about those times when we want to be like Jesus, but what's stopping us? What's stopping us? Maybe it's fear of failure. Maybe it's fear of being embarrassed. Maybe it's fear from being told that we think we're more morally superior than everyone else. But the key is our relationship to Jesus. We see these wonderful people in our gospel passage, and especially in this chapter, who seek Jesus, who seek that relationship. That is above all the most important thing. They may have had different levels of faith just like we do, different degrees of faith. But they go to seek Jesus. They don't go to seek Peter. They don't go to seek James. They don't go to seek John. They seek Jesus. So let's make sure today that we are seeking him, seeking what we believe he will do. Well, what if we don't know what he would do, Father? That's where we find how important our prayer life is, how important it is to read the scriptures. And that's how we're able to know what Jesus would do. And we can get the faith we need to be and to take the shot to be Jesus and not be afraid. God bless you.